All right, I hate to bring us back down to earth with this one, but how does Biden not having a contract with us change anything? He is sitting in the perceived seat of power, making all these orders to destroy the country for his Chinese masters. How does this not affect us when the company you work for is shut down and there is no more fuel for your car?
Well, you don't let it get to that point. You grab your friends and neighbors and you say, look, this is going to hell in a handbasket. And that guy is just the president of a foreign municipal corporation that is just getting started again after being bankrupted. We don't want a second, we don't want this monster to resurrect itself. We want it to be dead and remain dead. And so that's why we don't have a contract. We have severed any contract with that entity or the people promoting or running that entity. And we have made that greatly public knowledge. We have published it, we have sent notice, we have done everything that we need to do to say, no, we don't accept that.
Right.
So the Holy See is still under the gun. They are still under contract to provide us with all of the services that were discussed under the constitutional agreements. But we don't have to accept those services from Joseph Biden. And we don't have to accept those services from Nancy Pelosi. And we don't have to accept those from any kind of incorporated entity at all. So Francis is under the gun again. And I have some sympathy for the devil in this, because really they're in a position where they can't win.
No.
And it's just a matter of time until they realize that they can't win, and that this is at a point where yes, they have to provide the services, and no, it can't be via this means.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice to Francis is to fire them all and start over with a complete clean slate and do what should have been done in 1865. Tell people the truth about all of this and let them vote.
Mm-hmm.
And do it in such a way that it's not a cheated vote.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. Get the mop and the bucket out.
Right.
Why can Biden only sign blank executive orders? It appears that his entire performance may be nothing more than a film studio.
Well, there's executive action and then there's executive orders. Executive orders only apply to the executive members of the corporation. So what you're looking at is Biden and the municipal governors. And their particular, their subordinates, their direct inline subordinates. And that doesn't mean a hell of a lot when you don't have a contract and you're basically just trying to grab onto other people's assets.
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you for that. What exactly is the military doing right now? It seems like they are still not doing their job.
The military is trying to find their butts with both hands. Because remember, they were kept as dumbed down and in the dark as we were. They had to be in order to get them to participate in this mess. I mean, there were always top leaders that were corrupt as hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the rank and file of the military never knew any of this stuff any more than rank and file Americans did.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very confusing. They don't know who to trust. They don't know what's right or wrong in the, all the accusations and finger pointing that goes on. And so they're still scrabbling around going, they're just having a real hard time figuring all this stuff out and do it stat. You have to have this together and you have to do it now. And so every time that they turn around, there's some other legality or there's some other point of historical interest that they can't rightfully interpret. And then they have to try to do all this. I mean, they're trying to compress what's taking, it took me 50 years, right? They're trying to compress this in maybe 5-6 months.
Yeah.
And even with all the resources of the military, there's a process of learning that has to take place so that you can even identify who or what is being talked about in these documents, all these treaties, all these constitutions, these different jurisdictions, the different names that these things are styled by. It's hard even for me. So,
No kidding.
well, sometimes it's hard. Most of the time I, just, okay, well, that. But, for somebody just starting out, it would be hellaciously difficult.
Yeah.
And then because of all of the obfuscations and the, misdirections and deceitful names and all of the rest of it, and mistakes that people have legitimately made,
Mm-hmm.
it gets even worse. It's even more confusing.
Right.
So I think part of what is coming here is going to be blissfully welcome once the military realizes that it can be this simple. And this simple is that there can be a general amnesty. They don't have to worry about getting their heads chopped off because they were deluded. Everybody was deluded, or darn near everybody was deluded by the chicanery that was employed here.
Mm-hmm.
And there can be a resolution of the commander-in-chief's office. And there can be a resolution of the presidential office to the right presidential office.
Mm-hmm. Which would be.
And we can restore an American federal republic. Because remember, the federal republic was always supposed to be owned, operated, and controlled by Americans.
Right.
Okay. So their basic plan that I have observed them doing, not that anybody told me this, but that I can see what they're doing, was to take the territorial entity and inhabit or try to populate the vacated American Federal Republic.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all operating as British territorial citizens.
So were they trying to pull another state of state?
I think that some powers, probably within Westminster and the Queen's government, were thinking, oh boy, we've got another opportunity. We'll just pull another cuckoo bird on them and we'll take our territorial guys and we'll enter their vacant federal republic and take that over. And then we'll have the federal government under our unique and only control, and we can tell the Pope to go blow himself. And I think that's what they were thinking. But that's not really possible because the federal republic, our federal republic, is owned by us, and it's an American institution. It's not British.
And it's unincorporated too.
It's unincorporated. So, the only entity that actually has the control over the federal republic is the Federation. And that's because the Confederation stopped functioning. All right. So you have to kind of look at this in terms of dominoes. You tip one domino over and they go right down the line. Well, if you go from the opposite direction, it does the same thing. I mean, line up a line of dominoes, whether you hit it from the right or you hit it from the left, the dominoes fall this or that way, right?
Right.
Well,
right.
So the way they had it, the dominoes were falling to the right, and the way we have it, the dominoes are falling to the left.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the difference. The Federation of States created the Confederation and empowered it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Confederation created the Federal Republic and empowered it.
Right.
So when the Federal Republic and the Confederation are both no longer able to function,
right,
which is what happened in the
Civil War,
wrath after the Civil War, all of those powers collapse back to the Federation that gave them in the first place.
Because
And, we had our
delegated powers, right?
Well, they were delegated powers, right? And so all of those powers that once belonged to the Federal Republic, all of those powers that belonged to the Confederation, by operation of law, returned to the Federation that delegated those powers in the first place.
Yep.
And that happens by operation of law. That happens like gravity.
Right.
Nobody has to go out and raise their hand and say that this is the way it goes. This is the way it goes. And so all of those powers, all of those structures, all of that delegation has returned to the Federation.
Which means we're mowing our own lawn.
Right. We're in charge of mowing our own lawn, making our own decisions, hiring our own contractors or not. Mm-hmm. And we're not limited to accepting whatever the Holy Roman Empire or the Pope throws at us. Mm-mm. They are under contract to us. We're not under contract to them. So what can happen is that President Trump can do what we suggested a year and a half ago.
Right.
And simply declare his birthright political status as an American, retain a U.S. citizenship at the territorial level, and enter into the actual presidency of the Federation. And remember, we already went through that whole roll call vote on the issue.
Right.
So it's already approved.
Right. And
all he has to do is accept his birthright political status as an American, as one of the two dual citizenships that he can operate in as
gotcha.
a
federal person. Officer. Yeah.
As a federal officer. And then what happens is that he automatically, as the president of the Federation, acquires all the executive power over all of the branches of the federal government. Mm-hmm. And any subcontractors.
Mm-hmm. He's in the power seat.
Right. And he can then, as an American, he can occupy the Federal Republic.
Yeah. I think it's such a simple idea.
Well, and it's incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have an American who is an American president.
Right. Not an attorney.
Not an attorney, operating an American federal republic.
Right.
And there's absolutely no. Then there is no fighting back and forth with the British over this.
Right.
And there's no usurpation involved.
Right.
Everything falls back into place because the Americans are in control of what the Americans should be in control of, and they are operating as Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, then the British are under contract to do this. And the Papists are under contract to do that. And you have an American in charge of making sure that they do their job and don't overstep.
And when he's in that position as an American, he's the employer.
He is not the employee.
Yep.
And that's how they've been jerking him around this entire time.
Yep.
But he has executive power over their executives.
Right.
So he could go in there and he could tell Joe Biden, Joe, you have to jump this high and you have to jump this many times. Oh, and by the way, you need to issue an executive order telling all of your executive employees to stand down.
And get the hell out of the White House.
And by the way, you don't have a contract, Joe.
Yeah.
So you guys are going to have to vacate, and whatever the Holy See is going to come up with as a new team.
Who cares? Yeah.
No. You see what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic.